G'day guys, check. Oh, I'll quickly sort this out. I'll just quickly unmute Christian. He's working, he's remote today. Hey mate, how you going?
Yeah, good.
Yeah, good. Alrighty. Just put my little light thingy up there. Okay, cool. Okay. How you doing, man? What's been happening?
Oh, I've been on holidays from TAFE, so it's nothing much has really been going on.
G'day,
Not really.
Anthony. How you going, mate? Yeah, nice. Are you because you guys head back in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, we do. I'm not sure the exact dates. Around mid July, and we're meant to start the we'll go more in depth into virtualization and Cisco security, things like that.
Yep. Yeah, 60 and okay. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. G'day, Glenn. How you going, mate? All right. So today, I'm going to do my best not to get distracted. So, Glenn, that means you have to not be so distracting. No, I think, yeah, I want to actually get some. I want to get some stuff done today. So we're going to be focusing a little bit more on the debugging and testing side of things. Yeah. Oh, really? Okay. That's not great. I'm guessing you've been sick lately as well. So everyone's been sick. I've been like sick for the last month. So I'm not. Yeah, it's not been great. Um, yeah. So as you can also see, computer's fixed. It's been changed with white coolant now. So I I pulled out all the purple and basically just put white in there. I changed all the fittings out. So that was pretty cool. Yeah, so yeah, that's pretty much me. And Christian, you guys are heading back soon, so that's good. Yeah, I think that's yeah. So I think yeah, like I think there's a couple of other things that's going on here. I've got to finish my book, my chapter. So I'm writing about logging, which is really cool. It's always something. It's a bit of a passion of mine. That and documentation. Similar to Michael, I think all Michaels love documentation. I I don't know why I love documentation, but I really do. But anyway, so let's get stuck into it. Um, so what we're going to be doing today is we're just going to be debugging the front end of the program. So we're going to basically just be writing tests, as well as we're going to be actually making sure those tests pass. And then from that, we're going to then obviously if it doesn't work, we're going to troubleshoot it. So I think let's just let's get stuck into it. So I think first things first, I'm just trying to work out, okay, I'm going to start my functions. It's going to be 2 seconds, Christian.
Yep.
I'm just going to fire up functions. Oh, I better focus on the scene. There we go. Sweet. All right, functions are running. So we've got our local hosts, which is really good. I'm just going to grab that and stick that in our whiteboard. So I've just pasted the URLs. Oh, that is cool. So you can kind of just grab them, rip them out. They should be able to, you can just copy and paste them out. So, all right, let's get stuck into it. So first things first, we're going to go and do some tests. So I've got my job started. That's the first big thing, which I'm happy with. So we'll go flip over to actually writing some code here. So first things first, we're going to need to test. We've got our functions. I'm kind of like, actually, we've got a test directory that needs to go up here. Okay, so we've got a couple. Oh, okay, we've got a couple of we've got a couple of PowerShell scripts there here we need to test. We're just going to leave them as they are. I'm not going to package them up or make them a bit of a module or anything because one, we're just kind of, this is just for proof of concept. So we're not really going to be going down that path. So we're basically just going to, yeah, we're going to work on that. So one thing I want you to do, Christian, I need to fix that. I'm just going to leave it as it is for the time being. All right, so we're going to write some tests. So first thing we need to do is we're going to actually write some tests. So are you following me right now?
I am now, yes.
Yeah, perfect. All right, so in the test directory there, we've got our 2 scripts. We're going to write tests for each of them. So now, usually you generally just append test to the end. It's just a common practice. Just the easiest way to identify whether the script is a test or whether it's not. So, so what we can do here is we're just going to start. Okay, so we've got our 2 tests. So we're going to write some PowerShell tester tests. So basically, I'm just going to quickly send you a link. Let's quickly open this up in a private browser. It helps if I can type in pester. So if you head on over to GitHub pester, I'm just going to chat you the link now.
That contains all the scripts and the like.
That's just basically, yeah, it's a repo. It's got a really good documentation on it. I'm not going to go into really we're not going to go right into the nitty gritty of it. We're just going to basically be focusing on the actual tests. Like we're just going to be focusing on writing some tests. So the first thing is actually before anything, I know that my viewer count kind of gets wonky. So if you're still watching this, can you just throw a quick hello or just a quick hello world into the chat, because sometimes it gets a bit wonky. So I just want to make sure that you guys are all fine. So once you're in there, we're going to basically follow along together. Basically, you tell me what you know about pester tests. Okay, cool. Thanks, Anthony.
What I know.
Yep.
Pester tests are essentially a script written to test the functionality of a script. So you write it in the form of these are what you expect to happen.
Yep.
Obviously, not with every possible outcome, because there'd be hundreds of thousands of possibilities. Just this is what I expect to happen.
Yep. So you're pretty much 100% on. So basically, the reason why we write tests is because we want to what's the word? It's if we write tests that we need to know the outcome of, and then basically when we make changes to that code, check 1, 2. I'm buffering a bit. My fault, not yours. Okay, no worries, Glenn. It's just that I've got like a lot of just viewers kind of bouncing around. The viewer count's bouncing around. But basically, what we're doing is we're testing the function, like you said, we're testing functionality, but it's testing those specific things or testing those areas that we need to test, so that when we make a change or a deployment, we don't have this we can automate that process. So rather than having, let's say it's really useful for those much bigger deployments and more really complicated tests. So a really good example is a test that test where you need to test specific functionality for an application, or you need to do unit testing for a specific functionality for an application. So it's really useful just to be able to automate that process. You want to be able to test 70% of your code. Obviously 70% of the code's a nice, you don't want to really be testing everything, but it just helps you be able to actually get it helps you be able to get enough code confidence in your application, so that when you're actually rolling it up into deployment, you're not kind of sitting there and having any issues when you go to deploy. Now, that's not to say that everything's going to break or everything's going to be sweet, because that's just not the case. I actually was talking about this in my chapter of a book. The best way to picture testing is basically like, if you think of an aircraft in your example, basically testing is all those manufacturers' tests, that you'll do before the aircraft will take off. So there's your tolerance tests and things like that. Flight tests, things like that, before the aircraft can actually fly. That's basically this whole concept. It's basically to complement the process, and it's obviously to streamline and improve it. For example, with logging is a bit like the black box. It's basically your post, it's your troubleshooting on the post side of things when things do go wrong. So I'm not going to really talk about logging today, because we're here to write tests. So what I'm going to quickly do, I'm going to quickly show you. Actually, no, I'm not. I can't, because it's on my work machine. So what we're going to do is we're just going to write some basic tests. So if we jump back to the GitHub repo and we go to the wiki, the wiki is actually really good. It talks about what's pester, blah blah blah. I'm just kind of quickly going down. Okay, so I'm just kind of reading this output. Okay, so if you look at the wiki under Pester, you can just basically gives you a really good understanding of how to create a basic a Pester test.
Yep.
To start using Pester, you may use the uFixture function to scaffold both the view implementation and test function. It's not necessary to use this, but it's there if you want. Okay. So most of basic when you're writing your tests, you generally, Glenn, if you want to interject or anything, mate, you can just jump in. That's fine. I'm obviously just kind of, yeah, just feel free to interject. It's fine. So with Pester, basically, the way that I like got my head around Pester, like to begin with, when I looked at it, I thought it was super confusing. But the way I got around Pester was that basically you got multiple blocks. So we got our describe block. We have a context block. And then we had a it block. Now, so let's going to quickly grab where's the actual definition of describe and context. So describe block basically creates a logical group of tests. So in essence, that's kind of like a nice big group of all your tests. Your context block basically is the logical grouping of your it blocks around your describe block. So you can have multiple context blocks. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm like from what I remember reading, you can have multiple context blocks. Generally, actually no, you can. Yeah, you can have multiple context blocks inside of a describe block, but think of them as just grouping. With context blocks and describe blocks, you can add features like tags and things like that. So if you want to execute a specific test, you can actually tag the test itself, so that basically you're just executing that specific functionality. So you're not having to run through an entire test. You're only running through 20% of your test. So if you jump back into VS Code, we're going to actually write our tests.
Yep.
So what we're going to do here is we're going to describe block. So you can see how it looks a little bit weird, like what we're doing here. I'm just going to kind of write a it also helps if I can spell function. So as you can see here, we've got a describe block, we've got our context block, we've got our it block. So once we've got our, you can see it looks a little bit weird. Now, the one thing that I kind of was thinking about how to actually get a good understanding of how this all kind of fits together is that the describe block is it describe, context, and they're functions. And realistically, they just are. And so if you think about it, basically, if you got a function here, we know our first parameter is a value, so we can actually call that, we're just going to call it our so we got our first describe is what you're testing, parameter foo context. The scenario is testing, accepting a string. Perfect. Yeah, thank you, Glenn. So yeah, it's what you're testing. Example parameter foo context. Yep. The scenario is what the test is acting. Example accepting a string. Yeah. Okay. Yep. The scenarios is what. Yep. Okay. Is that the test is acting is example accepting a string. Yep. Okay. Cool. So once you have that down pat, link to Bruce Podcast to talk for our audience. Oh, okay. So basically, obviously we can then start to build our testing out. Glenn, you're going to have to provide me a bit more information on how to assert, because that's something I kind of didn't really get my full head around in terms of assert. So we're going to now just kind of start stepping through some of these little bits and pieces. So line breaks don't work in chat, boo. So for example, let's just quickly run this test. So this is basically we're describing our test. We've got our context. We're just going to test testing. Testing basic true false. So we're just going to execute this. I'm just going to go back to live share. Make sure you have right access. Perfect. So if we execute this, just F8 it, we can see it you can see how it's kind of drawn up a nice start remote job. We've got our basic context block, and then we've got a testing basic function. And you can see there it says expected false but got true. So what we can actually do is we're basically writing we're actually writing tests now to be able to test a specific outcome. So in this instance, on line 7, we're testing true. The output of it is true, and then we're piping it. And basically, there's these two words that basically we're using called should be. And if we go back to Pester, basically what we're saying in that such situation is the response should equal false, which is not going to be the case. They either, it's true. It's going to equal true. So what's going to happen is basically that test will fail. Now, one of the things that is really this is the thing that I love about Pester more than anything else in the world when it actually comes to writing tests. The tests look so much cleaner than if you ever had to write it as PowerShell. What I mean by that is, think of the process of what you would have to do this in PowerShell. Hang on one sec, my wife's just walked in the door. I was going to quickly shut the door. Think of this as what you would have to do in PowerShell if you were to actually have to write this test. And I can tell you now, before I found Pester, I did it, and it was not cool. And literally it took me roughly 3 days and 1,000 lines to basically to write the initial test, and then basically after spending an hour with Pester, I rewrote the entire script using Pester, and it was basically 200 lines, and they were just tests, one after the other, bang, 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 and they were just testing different server functionality. Anyway, so I'm going to get you to jump in and start driving. So basically, I'm going to start writing some bits and pieces. One of the things that I kind of need to get my head around quickly is assert mock. Okay, so one of the things that we can do is we can actually, in our functions, we can actually mock a function. And what I mean by that is we can actually pretend to execute the function, but we're not actually executing the function. We are, in essence...
So we're saying it's there, so it'll pass it, so to speak.
Yes, so to speak. So, for example, if we jump onto mocking with Pester on the GitHub page, I'll just chat you the link. Basically, checks if a verifiable mock has been invoked. If not, so it's exception. Assert mock call. Checks if a mock command has been called a certain number of times and throws an exception if it hasn't. Okay, now I know what assert mock means. Assert mock called means. Okay, so basically what you're doing is, for a really good example, for testing, let's say you've got, you want to, I'm just trying to think of something where you want to mock. Glenn, if you want to interject here and just provide some items where you reckon what you would mock, that would be great. Things that I would mock would be logging, things that just it doesn't need to be they're not necessarily yeah, exactly. There you go. You want to mock things like remove item, new item. You want to mock things like logging. You want to mock things like any sort of
things that would have a permanent change in the
exactly anything that would have a permanent change within it. So, for example, where you would basically validate, for example, it's really any change in your system. So in this instance, we actually don't really need to mock because all of our code is function, and so it's all basically either we can't. Actually, Glenn, you might be able to provide a bit more insight into this. How would you unit test an Azure function itself outside of the fact of not being able to run the Azure function? Because you actually have to obviously compile and run the Azure function, and the only way to really test the function would be able to write tests, integration tests against the against the endpoint, and then basically test the output. Which means you are, in some sense, you can't really mock it, because in a sense, you can't really mock the request if you're actually testing the function itself, if that makes sense. So what I mean by that is, then assert the output. Okay. The only reason why I'm kind of like, I wouldn't go that way would just because if like you can't, like, yeah, I can kind of see what you mean. Yeah, you can assert the output. Yeah, okay. Cool. All right, so we'll just get started. What we're going to do is we'll write some integration tests to begin with, and then we're going to write a, we're going to mock our response initially. We're going to assert our output, and then we're going to write some, basically what we expect our result to be. And then from that, we're going to then write a whole bunch of ones that what do we expect our result to be as well. And then from that, we'll actually then write some other, we will then write some other bits and pieces. All right, so let's get started. Just FYI, Pesta is definitely not my strong suit. That's why I'm kind of like stumbling along. Like, I don't generally, yeah, I do write tests, but it's not something that I know inside out and back to front. Like me rabbiting on last night on OAuth, that's something I know inside out and back to front. But Pesta, yeah. We're getting into testing theories here, so I'll hold off. But TLE, easily testable code looks different to quickly tested code. Okay.
The quickly created code.
Yeah, the kind of thing. Okay, so it looks different than to quickly created code. Okay. All right. So.
So, well, what's TLDR?
Okay. So what we're going to do here, we're going to write some basic ones. So. Oh, how am I going to test it? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just be testing against my local environment, short story or somewhere. So.
Excellent. Thanks, Glenn.
Okay, one thing that's really important, I actually forgot to mention to you, Christian, is that with regards to the describe block, context block, and the it block, is that it's scope specific. This is really important because basically scope specific, what I mean by that is, it's scope specific. The variable scope is specific. So what I mean by that is, for example, if we go up to the describe block here, and I did a write host URL endpoint, it won't exist. Well, actually, that's, yeah, fair enough. That was not going to exist. But let's say I put URL endpoint up here. Obviously, it's going to exist. If I try and change it in here, the scope, it'll create its own child variable that's pertained to the scope of this specific function, and basically it'll only exist in there. However, if you obviously you can get around using actually, I don't think I ever told you this. So there's yeah, did I tell you about the 3 types of variables?
I don't recall.
Okay, you got global, you got script, and you got, well, technically you have 4, but I'm just going to kind of stick to so basically global variables are completely accessible in the console itself. So what I mean by that is basically once the console, the variable has been declared, the variable will remain in memory even after the script's closed. Script variables will remain in the will remain active while the script is active. So for example, you're running a long-running script and you're making changes to that variable. That variable will change while the script's active. The moment the the script's or the script is completed, then basically the variable's destroyed. Standard variable is basically wherever it pertains to its scope, and what I mean by that is it in a function, then it's basically within its function, it's scoped to that. Now, if you want to write inside a function, the rule of thumb is within a function is if you want to write to a variable outside a function, you basically have to declare it with a script or a global. Now, you can read in from the outside in, but you just can't write. So it's just a big gotcha. Anyway, so it's going to define a. I'm not going to use a before all here because I just don't want to do it.
Are you wanting to define that in the context section?
I'm going to do a start job. Nope, we can do it here because it's up. Because we're going to be reusing this all the time. So this is going to be something that we're going to be reusing. So first thing we're going to do is basically we're just going to start. We've defined our URL endpoint, and then we're going to actually start writing some tests. So the first thing we actually need to do is actually, what is our expected output? That's going to be our first thing. So we're going to actually start working out what did we want. Yeah. What are you eating, man? You're really.
I'm not. I was flattening a plastic bag.
Oh, it's so random. It's so random. Anyway, so basically what we're going to do here is we have obviously testing basic true false function. We're going to actually skip this one.
I didn't expect the gain on the market to be that high.
G'day, Mr. Demon Wolf. So what we're going to do here is we're basically just going to so what's our expected output firstly for actually what's our expected input? That's going to first thing, and then we're going to work out. Wait, PowerShell has built-in test functions? Yeah. So what we can do is we're going to basically quickly step back for a second, and we're going to go start PS remote job. All right. So I want you to kind of follow back on me with start PS remote job.
Yep.
And we had computer name, PowerShell script, and URI. Okay. So basically we're gonna need to define our input, and then from that we're going to define our output. We're going to adjust our input to get an output, a different output. So what I mean by that is, so we're going to do I'm going to specify the body of the request, like so. I just totally fobbed this up. I was testing the function itself, and this is a test on the actual script itself. All right, we're testing this. We're going to still be testing the function. I'm going to rename this. 2 secs. Don't really do PowerShell, mostly bash scripts. Yeah, pesto. Yeah. Yes, that's what I mean. Yeah, I am writing an integration test. I'm going to write integration test initially, and to actually test the function. Then we will cert and then basically, yeah. I'll use sticky notes and whiteboard. Oh yeah, I'm very sticky notes and whiteboardy. We use whiteboard because Christian's remote, so basically it helps us collaborate remotely. So, are you still yeah, you're on that. You're on the whiteboard. Okay, so sorry, I'm just kind of losing my train of thought. I kind of need to focus here. So, so HTTP start job. obviously we're just going to start doing bits and pieces. So what we're going to do here is we're going to define the body of our request. So I want you to kind of help me out with this one. So if we go back to start remote PS job, I want you to help me out. So I'm just kind of just chucking this here as a, like, I generally, if I'm kind of working with something, I'm just going to kind of drag things in so I don't have to alt tab as much. So if we just quickly, I want you to kind of work on the body here. So this is the body of the REST request that we're going to make into, great for talking to each other and sharing notes, Michael's Teams. Yeah, we use Teams all the time. I've got, I work for Instinct Technologies, so we're like massive, we're a Modern Workplace Alliance partner and obviously Microsoft Gold partner, and basically we're just cutting edge, so we're like Telstra calling for Teams, all those kinds of bits and pieces. So basically everything. Yeah, we use 365, everything. We're pretty much completely cloud. We have a very limited presence. Okay, sorry, I just.
Well, he does. I don't.
Yeah, yeah. So from a body of the request, we've got obviously standing testing standing request. We need to now format the body of our REST method. So what do you reckon we're going to put in there?
In the body of that.
Yep. Yeah, 365.
Wouldn't we just emulate the body down
100%.
in the bottom as well? So the computer name and the code.
Yep. Sorry, I'm just going to do something quickly. This has literally gotten me to the point that I actually put it on my list.
And thanks for the heads up, Glenn. I'm yeah, I need to start with any sort of testing, so integration may as well be it.
Alright, sorry, I'm just adding a thing there where I'm going to come and add convert to and from base 64 to PS core because I've had a gutful of not having it. It's literally driving me nuts. Anyway, so what we're going to need to do there is do that. I'm also going to need to, so we basically got our body of our request. It's got a computer name. We obviously going to need to make a computer name up, so we can just do this for test 01. Our code can just be, we just need to put something in that code, and that's pretty much that. So what we're going to do here is we basically, we've got our standard request. Now, this is the cool part, we get to actually test the response. Yeah, I use OneNote all the time. We're going to now test so what do you reckon almost feel like home programmers use Microsoft stuff. With REST response, what do you think the first thing we need to test for?
Whereabouts are you? I've got you clicked as follow, but it's not showing up.
I'm on HTTP, function HTTP's, oh, okay. Go to function HTTP start job.
Okay, just gonna go with that. function.
And while you're doing that,
Okay.
what we're building is we're kind of we're building a remote bot with PowerShell and Azure Functions preview. So what we're doing is we have basically it's very similar to PowerShell automation hybrid runbook workers. So if you've ever used Azure automation hybrid runbook workers, so basically you have I'm able to send a REST request to this my Azure function, which will basically take a script block of PowerShell, stick it in a database that will get sucked down. When Michael is done here and he's used the AAA testing range of active, so first he runs the testing, makes a fake body, then calls the invoke REST method, inserts an output we'll expect. Yep, perfect. Thanks, Glenn, mate. Definitely not my forte, so you guys can definitely fill in. So basically, it's just a remote code execution, and this should actually remotely code execute over the internet. So basically, be able to have a machine sitting out on a network that doesn't actually has network connectivity to the internet. And then basically using REST services, we're able to do remote code execution with PowerShell. So that's basically where we're at. But anyway, so let's get cracking into it. So what do you reckon the response should be?
I have no idea.
That's totally fine. Totally fine. Glenn, what do you reckon the response should be, mate? Because the way I do it, again, this is me being pedantic. First one should not be null. Should be the first one. If the test fails, we know it's failed. Shouldn't be null. Now, admittedly, it's going to get caught out with a whole bunch of other things, but like I'm Mr. Pedantic, but this is just me with when I've done my my integration testing with the old mate at a D2L module. So we've got the first one. We've basically tested initial response. We're looking for errors. We didn't get an error. So what do you think we should be getting?
Don't
trap the error. I'm not trapping the error. Don't trap the error. Pesta does it for you nicely. Oh, okay, cool. All right. All right. Sorry,
yeah,
I thought.
yeah. My session's no longer following yours.
Is
so,
it? I'm just gonna send you a new one. Oh, it says you're in session.
Yeah, it's just not updating on my end, and
yeah, you're
I don't
on test
know why.
object property.
Functions, tests, function, HTTP start. Yeah, no, it's still only showing the before you even pasted the info in. I don't have any of the new stuff there.
Okay, that's fine. So what we can do here is we can do we'll just biff this. I'll get you to try and rejoin. Oh, I think I just pasted that somewhere else. No, I didn't. I pasted it in your chat. Okay. So once we do that, while you're doing that, I'm just going to kind of mosey along to here. So we're going to test testing response, and I'm actually going to test the response. Yes. Do you want to go through? Do you want to go into you should be using before each method instead of bare code in the context? Yes. The reason why I didn't really use it is because I'm not I'm aware of it. It's just that I'm not completely across it. So I'm kind of like just trying to, yeah, like I know what you mean. Like we can use before each to actually, for each time we execute on the context, but I'm kind of, yeah, it's not something that I'm fully across. So I don't particularly want to teach something that I'm not, well, I'm not fully understanding of. Like I have a bit of an understanding of it. It's just I don't particularly want to implement it at the moment. Yeah, anyway, I'm not completely across it, but anyway. All right, so the next one we're going to be testing is we're obviously looking for errors, and then we're going to be testing Test the response. We're looking for success. So okay, so what we're going to do here, so if we remember, are you following along with me now?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. So what we're going to need to do now is we're going to be looking for that success. So remember how if we go right up to the top or wherever it was in start remote, PS remote job, if I can find it. Was it in there? Now, so I'm literally like trying to find where I put it. Give me 2 secs. I'm just going to jump into the other one.
Are you talking about the status codes?
Yeah. Oh, not the status codes themselves. Actually,
HTTP start job has the codes we made, or chose for the SQL requests.
perfect. Okay, so what we're going to do here is, if I go back to function test. So I'm just going to paste this in here because it just helps me. Again, this is our expected output. So this is what we decided our expected output's going to be. So we're going to actually write it to explicitly do this. So so we're going to expect a success. So what I'm looking for there is shouldn't be null. That success property should not be null at all. Does that make sense? So what I'm
Yeah.
doing is I'm actually testing for success. And we're going to quickly do another quick one, test response. Ensure there is no error.
And that should be null?
Yeah, it should be null because the property shouldn't even exist. Okay, so now we've done that. We've kind of tested. It's not null. We're looking for we've looked for success. We've looked for an error. Next thing we need to test our status codes in GUID. This is something actually I want to do. Sorry, I'm going to take a shortcut. Sorry, I'm doing this. Stuff it. No, I'll just write it in here and then I'll deal with it later. Sorry. I like how I've got test property as my region and then the functions test object property. That's going to grate me. Sudo fix me. So what we're going to do here is we're going to head back on down into old mate. And what I'm going to do is we've now tested success. So what I'm actually going to do, instead of doing it this way, because again, it's just me being pedantic. I'm going to call this function. Pass the object, pass the property. I just think it's cleaner. Personally, I think it's cleaner. Glenn, you can, yeah, I actually really want your feedback on this one. What would you like? Like testing properties, obviously, is fairly basic process, but I've always found that obviously with different properties, especially booleans, you're going to have issues with obviously asserting whether they're true or false. Oh, sorry, testing whether they're true or false. So should not be true. Or should be true. So what I've done there is I've just changed the test, so it's actually just testing the object property itself. That should be fine. I wholeheartedly disagree. Okay. So can you elaborate, Glenn? So what we're going to do now is we're basically testing for property error. Should be false. And then I'm just going to, that test is now harder to understand. It is, but the problem with it is that test object property, test object, like the only reason why I'm using test object property is because basically, like for example, this is the biggest issue I have with tests. Is if I go, for example, let's assume let's just assume the property success was Boolean. You can't just say whether that's equal to true or false. So most people would, generally do this as a general test. You actually, it's just, I find it's easier to test. I find it's easier just to test on its, like I find it easier to be 100% sure when testing, but yeah, this is one of the reasons why, but because then I can actually do this and test a whole lot. Just object property. Okay. So what we can do here is do that. What's our expected output, GUID and status?
So when you say the functional call there, Glenn, are you referring to the test object property entry itself?
The functional call doesn't actually say what it's testing. I know what he means. So basically, yeah. All right. It'll take 2 seconds. This is the beauty with tests. If I had to write this in PowerShell, I'd be like here all day. It's just to try and make a single change. I'm just gonna quickly do that. So we're gonna do test success properties. Looking for okay. So what we're going to do here. Okay, where did I go? Hang on. Well, okay, we've got a lot more chat. Yep. It's ambiguous. Testing what? Test now should be called has a success property that does not that is not null.
Back the way you, oh yeah. Yeah, I see what's being gotten at.
Yeah. Well, the thing is Glenn does testing. So at the end of the day, though, I'm here to learn as well. Like, and at the end of the day, like, if it's fine, like, I'd rather learn something than kind
Than
of,
not.
yeah, exactly. Because it means that then I get better at Pester. As simple as that. Like, there's nothing. It's everything for me to gain. Like, there's nothing for me to lose. It's that mentality. If you see it for everything you're gonna gain, then yeah. All right. So
Line 41.
oh shoot. Testing the response. Oh, what the hell? Why did I double it up? Ah,
No, I just did that while you weren't looking.
oh, okay.
And that should say looking for.
Okay, perfect. All right. So
I gather that's not meant to say rest response dot error.
where's that?
Line 52. There.
I don't actually have it on my screen. Line
Oh,
41.
don't tell me I've dropped out again.
Okay. So.
Hmm.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, mine's being weird again.
Okay. We're gonna nearly
I
finish
know
it up
why.
here anyway, but I just kind of want to at least get this done, and then we can kind of have our basic test written. So that's basically our initial standard request. Actually, no, we're missing something. We need to actually test the output. Oh, sorry, we need to test the whatchamacallit. Status code. So what should the status code equal?
The status code should equal completed.
We're starting the job.
Starting the job? So queued.
Queued, okay.
Or, hang on, no, a start would be in progress. My mistake.
No, it'd be queued. It would be queued. It won't be in progress because queued's before in progress.
Yeah, so you got queued, in progress, completed, and failed was what we had.
To speed things up and make a list of stuff and send it into a chat later. Yeah, cool. Thanks, mate. We're probably going to jump off soon. I've obviously got to go tend to my little one. So, yeah, I haven't seen it for ages. So I can't actually want to kind of see my little one. So what we're going to do here is, to lover. Thanks, mate.
Although we are doing it the wrong way around.
Yeah, we are doing it the wrong way around.
At the start.
That's the one thing I've always found is that like I really want to do Pesta before it starts, and then it just never happens because like I'm like, oh, where do I start? And then I'm like, yeah, okay, I got to do this and do this, and then yeah.
Yeah, and once you do that, I suppose you feel like you may as well just write the code.
Well, that's exactly right. And then you're kind of like, oh no, I really need to write pester. But the thing is, then coming back the other way, you're just like, why am I doing this? I should have like done this to begin with, like. And so you're kind of wanting to shoot yourself because you kind of you knew you should have wrote the test beforehand. That's how it feels.
Well, what do you do, Glenn? You write your pester test beforehand?
Nope. You're like, you just write them in your mind, and then basically like they're just compiled in your mind, and then you just run pester test in your mind, and then you're like, yeah, it's fine. Deploy. Yep. Quality control passed. Yep. I don't practice TDD for PowerShell. So that's pretty much it for our standard test. So we basically have tested all the bits and pieces we need to, and now we actually have the fun part of running it. We might as well throw it out to the chat. Is this going to run? Is this going to pass? Is this going to fail? Let's get a bit of a poll going, because I'm kind of sitting on the fence whether this is going to pass. If it doesn't,
I'm going to put my vote squarely in the I have no idea box.
I'm going to put it in fail. I don't think it's going to pass. It's an 80% fail rate. I'm going to say 100% because, well, I know it's 100% right now because I actually need to convert to base 64 and actually execute that first. Have faith, pass. All right. Sorry, I just need to quickly go grab. Did I really do that? I did too. Okay, so you've been looking for errors method. You're going to get at least one pass. Oh man, I've been looking for errors every time I look at it. I'm like, there's going to be errors in here. Like I just feel it. You know when you feel bad juju? That's like this. So I'm just going to execute this in the shell. So that should be there. I just want to test it. See if it's there. Perfect. All right, let's run this test. That's not a test. Where's my test? Where's my test? There it is. Okay, we're good. We're good. All right. All right. Here we go. Here we go. Functions running. There's no wait debuggers in there, so we'll just see what happens. I just don't want to attach. I just want to run it. Launch current file. Debugging of this type. Current. It's a good start. Hasn't even started it. That's what I think it's. Give me 2 seconds. Well, that's definitely not mine. I'm just gonna F8 it. What's it whinging about? Oh, stop complaining! I'm not even using test object property. Invoke pester path to file. Yeah, I didn't want to have to do it, but yeah, right. Sorry, I'm just.
You've convinced them.
It just drives me nuts. Like usually, like in PowerShell, this is the thing I love about the IC. I just go run. In VS Code, it's just so much more painful. So you can invoke pester and actually execute the scripts that way. Where is it? Git. Side functions. Tests. PowerShell script. Yep. Tests. Yep. Okay, got a false, expected true. So we had 2 failed. Testing. Oh, okay. Yeah, it is going to fail. It's 100% going to fail because this is going to fail. Derp. So everyone who said fail, you gotta. I kind of self-sabotage myself there, mate. Error occurred in context block. Convert to base. This is the problem I have. I need to convert it to base 64. You know what? I'm not. I'm just not even going to do it. Give me 2 secs. This is really bad, but I'm kind of just needed to get it to work. And .NET Core.
You spelled base 64 wrong. This.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
This drives me absolutely bananas. It's convert to, wasn't it? I'm going to spend another 30 seconds in this, and if I can't be bothered, I'm going to go straight back to my old ISE. Now, don't get me wrong, I still love Visual Studio Code, but just find the ISE is so much easier to use. Execute.
Is it because you're still in debug?
Am I?
Yep.
Where's that?
You got DBG in front of your CLI.
Oh, don't tell me I'm in debug mode. Let's restart it. You're probably right. You're probably right. I was basically didn't even see that. I'm in a different session. There we go. Perfect. Okay. Error occurred. Position argument cannot be found that accepts argument. Blah. What's that? Line 25. Oh wait, no, this one here. No, this one here. I'll just fix that. I'll just fix that. Let's rerun it. Here we go. There we go. Okay. We got a bad request. Perfect. Okay, so what did this whinge about? Okay, so it actually was a failure on the function itself. So this is really good. So it's actually we've actually found an issue that we need to fix. So we actually get to fix our function. So I think we're going to leave it there for today because like I think we've covered most of that first test. but it also gives us a lot. We can now go and fix our functions. So I might do that Friday. I've got to do some troubleshooting with Azure Functions on Friday for Tyler. So I'm basically going to do some testing with him to see if there's an issue with secure strings inside of Azure Functions. But the main thing is that yeah, we got some tests. I'm happy. We got testing going. So let me quickly change scenes and we'll change gears a bit. Yeah, I think that was a really good outcome for today. I think we had a really good outcome. Obviously, we've learned a bit about testing. Obviously, Glenn, thanks for your help, mate. That was really appreciated. And from there today, we've found some issues. Oh man, it's like having massive focus issues because of the screens. This is why you don't run benchmarks. But anyway, guys, if you really like what we're doing here, so basically, in the future, we've got a next upcoming project myself and Christian will be working on, and we're actually kind of looking for a bit more of a hackathon. This next project, which we'll be working with, is going to be a former project I worked with, which was a very, very long time ago. But I basically wrote a Battlefield 4 pixel aimbot. And so I'm thinking I'm going to probably just talk about, we're going to actually go and do a bit of a hackathon for that. I'm expecting, obviously, I'm going to try and get some of the newer guys onto it because it's an easier way to learn, teach you a bit. It's obviously a bit of math, but it also teaches you about logic flow within that context. Obviously, for terms and conditions with Twitch, so we won't be obviously using this multiplayer wise or anything like that. So it's going to be completely off. It'll all be completely done out of offline, so there won't be any sort of violation of terms and conditions there. But I think in terms of as a learning experience, and for example, as well as this PowerShell, so we're not going to be like, it's not going to be functional at all. So someone's not going to be able to rip the code out and then basically use that to actually cheat in game, because it's just like, from what I got my proof of concept, I'll bring it to that point. And at that point, it's still got a long way to go in terms of being able to actually garner any better performance out of it. So it's mainly just a proof of concept project, and then basically, depending on how many people we actually get interested on that, we basically can even extend it into, I'm actually probably going to need to engage with Mitchell, because he's a bit of a math whiz, and it's kind of pushing my math boundaries, but basically working out some math equations where we can actually plug it into Bureau of Meteorology's weather radar, and we can actually start tracking storm cells using math. And yeah, so it's basically a bit of a weird segue from a program to cheat, but at the same time, no, it's actually a really good stepping stone from going from that point to actually then doing weather tracking, because you kind of have a much more better understanding of how images work within PowerShell and .NET. So anyway, guys, thanks for joining us. Thank you, Christian, for participating, and yeah, I hope you guys have had a really good time. Also, make sure if you subscribe as well, you'll get notifications when I'm live, so you don't have to kind of hunt around. And if you're not on the PowerShell Live Slack channel, then yeah, that's another. You can definitely hit myself or Glenn up via Twitter or anything like that. We can basically then point you towards that channel, which is it's a really good resource. Definitely recommend it. But anyway, guys, thanks for having us, and hope to see you guys next time. Anyway, bye for now.
Thanks.